Business owners of Reddit, what's the most obnoxious reason an employee quit, had to be fired over? Had a guy on a location fake an injury. Now mind you, he did injure himself severely accidentally, but that wasn't his plan. His plan had been to fake a minor injury and get put on workers' comp. The problem was he screwed up how to do it and ended up hurting himself severely. You ask, how did you know he was trying to fake injure himself? Well, that's very easy to explain. We had a 20-minute tape of him hiding behind one of the trucks on the worksite practicing his fall, then a written confession from friends saying that he'd been planning it since the day we hired him. Medical clinic. An employee told a patient he wants to know what she tastes like. Doesn't get much worse. We hired someone to do video, photo media work. After a certain point he felt it was selling out and didn't want to do media commercially. He wanted to do business stuff. We asked him which role he would like. If he picked his role, we'd try it out. If he didn't, he would quit. He decided to quit. He couldn't come up with a role. I used to own a bakery and a woman quit because she blamed her yeast infection on a bad batch of yeast I bought from China. I may be a guy, but I don't think that's how it works. Depends on what she's using for a bread box. I used to do some consulting work and hired a woman to help out. Mostly clerical stuff and whatnot. I flew down to St. Thomas for a meeting and got a call from Sonitrol at 10:30 p.m. She had keys to my building but didn't know about the alarm. Basically, she and her boyfriend brought another couple down to have a foursome in one of my offices I had converted to a bedroom where I could crash if I worked late. So I called her. She answered during the act, and acted normal, albeit a little tipsy. I talked about a few mundane details I needed to relay to her anyways, and then mentioned to make sure she only was ever at the office between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. since there was a silent alarm that would call me with audio of activities in the building. When I got back in town, her keys were sitting on my desk. Pawnshop employee stole $400 from the cash register, then realized that there were video cameras. He had no idea where the security footage was stored, so in order to cover his tracks he set the store on fire. He actually ended up getting pretty badly burned in the process and went to jail right after the hospital. Tool shop owner here. One of our machinists would go out for lunch and slam back 3 to 4 beers every day. When I found out, I told him he can't drink beer at lunch. He said it was his time and what he did at lunch was his business, not mine. The next day he came back from lunch smelling like beer. I let him go on the spot. A few years later he showed up in my office asking for his old job back. He said that he was an alcoholic back then and was sorry for his behavior. He was now sober and needed a job. I hired him on the spot and it worked out great for 5 or 6 years. Then he started drinking again and I had to let him go a second time. I have no idea how he is doing now, but I often wonder. He was a great machinist and a nice guy when he was sober. The one that instantly jumps to mind was the woman who was fired day 2 of a call center training course because she wouldn't stop touching herself. Not sure how she got through HR screening. This was for a wireless phone company too, not a chat line or anything, since people requested details. It was really somewhat sad. She was late 30s, early 40s, and I don't think this was an employment scam or anything of the like, and more likely just a mental compulsion or drugs. It was really not that subtle, but done under a shawl, scarf thing draped over her lap. Politely and quietly asked to stop by the trainer, then stopped momentarily but started up again 15 to 20 minutes later. My wife and I started a small software company 20 years ago. She's the manager and does sales an hour. I do the programming. Anyway, we hired a programmer one time, and the first day on the job I spent the whole morning with him going over our development philosophy, how we do source control, etc., and then showed him an overview of our applications and how we build them. Along the way he was highly critical, pointing out what he considered flaws in everything. After lunch he goes back in to see my wife. He obviously didn't know we were married. We don't share surname, and at work we keep pretty much to ourselves. He says to my wife, "You know how to fix this company. You need to fire that other guy." We still laugh about that one. Not a business owner, but at a previous job we had issues with food being stolen from the break room fridge. The company made a big stink about it and it kept happening, so they very obviously installed security cameras in the break room, like big Cameras in plain sight. Pointing at the fridge. With our bosses being very direct about "there is the camera. You really want to lose your job over eating someone's sandwich." Few days later, guy gets fired for stealing food. Literally on camera, just grabbing people's lunch out of the fridge and eating it. Back when I had my translation business, I hired a guy to seek out contracts for me. I'd pay him 20% finder's fee. Instead of sending the finished project to a client, he accidentally sent naked pictures of himself. I learned of it when my client forwarded me the mail half an hour later, including the multiple glorious photos. I worked for a boutique hotel, small, cute, expensive AF as an ops manager. Basically, unless the area manager had to come in, I was the law. I get a frantic call on my downtime from an employee claiming our overnight guy tried to assault him. I have a sigh. As the guy freaking out is notorious for being a drama queen, I load up the security camera on my home PC. Go to the time frame. Our night guy legitimately lunged at his coworker and tried to strangle him. Luckily a desk was between them, and that gave the victim time to bolt. Instantly felt bad for doubting him. Well, this is when I call in the area manager. We show up at the crack of dawn and speak with the dude who made the attack, and he claims he didn't do it. We show him the video, and he responds with, "I don't recall the events of that evening. We fired him on the spot." What started the fight, you ask? Well, the victim had done extra work to make the attacker's shift easier. The attacker felt like this was an insult to his work ethic. Oh, and I got multiple reference requests from similar hotels asking for a good reference. I simply said I wasn't able to provide a positive reference, as legally that was all I could say. Not my business but my dad's. He hired predominantly people with criminal records, and literally all they had to do was inspect rental cars for damage as the cars left the lot and keep their noses clean. You could do pretty much anything you wanted on your downtime with no complaints from my dad, as long as he didn't get any complaints from the owners of the car lot. One day one of the supervisors for the car lot I worked for walks out and asks me for my dad's number. Supervisor had caught a guy stealing gas from the property. He even had security camera footage of it happening. Dude was instantly fired. The company I work is a contractor for a giant corporation, and we go to different stores to do work. This new guy we hired seemed normal at first, but it turned out he was a complete idiot. So one day, he goes on site with one of the senior employees to shadow him. This genius thought that because we did work for the giant corporation we could just eat anything off the shelves and from the refrigerators free. Well, employee saw this and was like, "WTF are you doing? You need to pay." And manager comes. This guy then started fighting with the manager, then got in his car after and drove off. Needless to say, his was fired the next day. We hired a new girl for the local pharmacy I managed. Very sweet and hard-working, and had prior experience at another major pharmacy chain. We had our own build of a common pharmacy software, and it took a day to train on how the system worked, and a day to train on how our company's process worked. She paid great attention to the first day and knew her ins and out of the software, but then checked out on the second day because she already knew how pharmacy process worked since she's worked in one before. But ours didn't follow the same protocol or procedure. We had no storefront. We were purely delivery only. These deliveries needed to be scheduled in a specific order and as efficiently as possible, as compared to retail chains where they will fill drug 1 on Monday, drug 2 on Wednesday, and drug 3 on Thursday, so you have to come in 3 different times. We could not drill this into her head no matter how many times we tried. She was retrained by me twice, and by 2 other colleagues because we thought maybe a different training mindset would be beneficial. The day I had to fire her, she had an appointment that night to take her sick cat to the vet to get put down. I felt like a bad guy and wanted to cry with her, but I also felt like I gave her so many chances and she kept coming back to "we always did it this way at the other place." Don't own a business but work on employee claims and lawsuits. I've told this story on here before. A guy filed a discrimination complaint against the company after he got fired for stealing hot dogs from the refrigerator. This warehouse big company this was not at my location kept a stock of hot dogs for employee appreciation picnics, usually weekly cookouts. No one knew why they were disappearing, so announcements were made and all employees were asked to not eat the hot dogs, and if they wanted some they could ask but couldn't have several packs. That didn't work, so warnings were announced. Finally a camera was installed near the refrigerator and he got caught red-handed. He was just practically inhaling the hot dogs directly from refrigerator by the packs. After he was fired, he filed a discrimination claim on the basis of disability due to his weight. I sent the response with a video of him eating the hot dogs. Also, he couldn't prove his weight was a disability under the ADA, and weight is not a protected class. We won that claim.